So, when I say the name David Beckham, what is literally the first thing that pops into your head? Like, just gut reaction.
Oh, man. Probably hair. I mean, definitely the changing haircuts over the years.
Right, right. The hair, maybe the abs, Victoria Beckham.
Yeah, Posh Spice, the red carpets, the whole, tabloid era.
Exactly. I think for most people, the public perception is just, well, he's this incredibly famous guy, he's a celebrity. But that superficial image is, it's actually a total trap.
It really is. It completely obscures what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, because we're not just talking about a guy who's, rich for a retired athlete.
No, not at all. He is, and this is the craziest part, he's a billionaire. Like an actual billionaire.
Which is wild.
Right. According to the 2026 Sunday Times Rich List, he and Victoria have this combined fortune estimated at over 1.185 billion pounds.
A billion. With a B.
With a B. And the twist here, the thing that makes this whole deep dive so relevant for anyone trying to build an audience or a business today,
Mhm.
is that the bulk of that wealth, it didn't come from his soccer salary.
Which honestly blows my mind. Because I look at athlete salaries and think, well, yeah, of course they're rich. But a billion is a whole different ballgame.
Exactly. And just to set some quick ground rules, before we get into the actual mechanics of this empire,
Hmm.
we are piecing this together using public financial estimates.
Right, all the public stuff.
Yeah, so Forbes valuations, analyses of his holding company, things like that.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, we're doing these for educational purposes, so, this isn't personalized financial advice.
Definitely not financial advice from us.
Nope. And when we mention huge brands today, like Adidas or H&M, it's purely to reverse engineer how these specific deals were structured. No endorsements or anything.
Perfect. So let's just jump right into it. The core thesis here, lesson one of the Beckham Playbook, is about how he treated his day job.
Yes, the career is the platform, not the destination.
Right. And he had this unbelievable run, right? Manchester United, Real Madrid, LA Galaxy, AC Milan, PSG. I mean, legendary stuff.
Totally legendary.
But even earning, a reported $7 to $8 million a year at his absolute peak at Real Madrid.
Which is fantastic money, obviously.
Oh, unbelievable money. But mathematically, you can't just save your way to $1 billion on a $7 million salary.
No, especially not after taxes and, well, the lifestyle expenses of being David Beckham.
Exactly. So how did he bridge that gap?
Well, he and his team realized something harsh really early on, which is biological depreciation.
Biological depreciation, meaning his knees are eventually going to give out.
Exactly. An athletic career has a strict, basically non-negotiable shelf life.
Mm.
But a brand,
Mm.
a brand is an appreciating asset. It can compound for decades if you build it right.
Right.
So he made this psychological shift. He stopped treating the soccer pitch as his final destination. It was just a customer acquisition channel.
I love that framing, a customer acquisition channel.
Yeah, he used that extreme global visibility to incubate things that would outlast his playing days.
It's so relatable to what people are doing right now. Like, it's the difference between being a freelancer and building a product business.
Oh, 100%.
Like, your playing career is the freelance phase. You're trading your time and sweat for a paycheck. But he used that cash flow to fund his product business on the side.
Right, which is the perfect lesson for anyone listening. Use your 9 to 5 to fund and build what comes next. Don't quit too early.
Which I've totally been guilty of in the past. Like, I get a tiny side hustle idea and I'm like, that's it. I'm quitting my job to sell drop-shipped phone cases.
Right, you abandon the platform way too soon, and then you have no cash flow.
Exactly. But Beckham didn't quit soccer to become an entrepreneur. He just rode the wave of that platform.
So if his career was just the launch pad, let's talk about the rocket. What was he actually building on top of it?
The layers.
Yeah.
I know we've broken this down into like 3 distinct layers. Let's start with layer 1.
So layer one is where most athletes just sort of stop. Brand partnerships.
The sponsorships?
Yeah. Early on, he had deals with major players. Adidas, H&M, Tudor watches. But here is the massive shift. He didn't just take flat endorsement fees.
Meaning what, exactly?
Well, traditionally, a brand rates a celebrity a $1 million check. The celebrity smiles, holding the product, and that's it. They walk away.
A flat fee for time and likeness.
Right. But Beckham started negotiating equity arrangements, revenue shares.
Wait, so he upgraded from just getting a check to actually owning a piece of the upside?
Yes. Because he realized, like, if my face is the main reason this jacket is flying off the shelves, a flat fee means I'm leaving millions on the table.
I mean, that is a huge leap, though. If I'm Adidas and I normally just write a flat check, why would I ever agree to give up equity or a percentage of sales?
Because of leverage. You can't ask for a revenue share on day one.
Right.
You build the audience first. Beckham proved that his specific endorsement actually moved the needle more than anyone else's. And once you have that undeniable leverage, you change the conversation.
So you basically say, hey, I'll take a lower upfront fee, which lowers your risk, but I want a percentage of every shoe sold.
Exactly. You stop trading time for money and you start securing ownership, which leads perfectly into layer two, DB Ventures.
DB Ventures, his holding company. The research says he partnered with Authentic Brands Group to, quote, industrialize his name.
Yeah, corporate jargon at its finest.
Right. Like, what does it actually mean to industrialize a human being?
So it means separating the human from the intellectual property. DB Ventures basically owns the trademarks, the image rights, the likeness of David Beckham.
Okay.
And Authentic Brands Group, or ABG, is this massive firm that manages rights for icons. Think Elvis, Marilyn Monroe.
Wow. Okay. So huge legacy brands.
Right. So Beckham partners with them, and he essentially outsources all the heavy lifting. ABG handles the supply chain, the retail negotiations, manufacturing the colognes.
What does Beckham do?
He simply licenses his trademark name to them and collects the margin. It is wildly lucrative. Like, his fragrance line alone has reportedly generated over $200 million in retail sales.
200 million just from the fragrances?
Yep.
That is the ultimate passive income. Like, he's not in a lab mixing chemicals. He's not arguing for shelf space at Macy's.
I don't know.
He just built this IP fortress and charges a toll to anyone who wants to use it.
Exactly. When you have the leverage, you stop asking, how much will you pay me? And start asking, what piece of this can I own?
Okay, which brings us to layer 3. And this is honestly the part of the deep dive I have been waiting for, the golden ticket.
The 2007 contract clause.
Yes, because in hindsight, this looks so obvious. But in 2007, when he went to the LA Galaxy, Major League Soccer in the U.S. it was not doing great.
It was struggling, big time. Ratings were poor, teams had folded, people thought Beckham was crazy, they thought it was this humiliating retirement tour.
Took a pay cut, right, compared to Europe.
He took a lower base salary, yeah. But his team was looking at the long-term horizon. Hidden in that contract was an option, a right to purchase a future MLS expansion franchise when he retired.
And the price was locked in.
Locked in at a flat $25 million.
$25 million. Which earlier I was kind of thinking about this like a personal finance emergency fund. Like, you save up so you have flexibility to take a risk later. But that's a bad analogy, isn't it?
It's a little too safe.
Yeah. It's more like, okay, imagine signing a lease on a coffee shop in a terrible neighborhood, but you negotiate a clause that lets you buy the entire building 10 years later at today's depressed prices, even if the neighborhood gentrifies.
That is a perfect analogy. It was a call option on the entire sport of soccer in North America.
But why would the league agree to that?
Short-term survival. Right around then, Toronto SC paid about $10 million to join the league.
Yeah.
So getting Beckham to guarantee $25 million down the road probably felt like a huge premium to them at the time.
Wow. They were thinking about next quarter and he was thinking 20 years out?
Exactly. And fast forward to 2018, he exercises the clause. He pays the $25 million to create Inter Miami CF.
And what is the valuation on that team today?
According to Forbes, Inter Miami is currently estimated to be worth between $1.35 and $1.45 billion.
He turned a contract clause into a billion-dollar franchise. I mean, are you kidding me?
And he reportedly holds about a 26% stake in it.
It's just staggering. And then he used that same playbook to get Lionel Messi to join the team in 2023, right?
Yep. Messi didn't just come for a base salary either. He reportedly got revenue shares with Apple TV's broadcasting deal.
Unbelievable. The lesson here is so clear. Long-term optionality over short-term cash.
Always. If you have the stability, trade immediate gratification for future upside.
But, okay, let's talk about timing, because a brilliant clause is useless if the market doesn't actually grow.
Right. You have to protect the asset and time the market. Which brings us to the Mundial 2026 context.
The World Cup.
Exactly. The 2026 FIFA World Cup is happening across North America right now. Miami is a major host city. Inter Miami is right in the center of the global spotlight.
The 20-year payoff.
He bet on American soccer in 2007 when it was definitely not obvious. He paddled out before the wave formed and just waited.
And he didn't just ride the sports wave. He owned a very specific lane. Like, he wasn't just an athlete and he wasn't just a high-fashion model. He was the crossover.
The direct intersection of elite sports and premium style.
Which is such a good lesson. It's like how generic personal finance content is really hard to monetize, but personal finance for travel nurses is a gold mine. Specificity is where the value value is.
Absolutely. You become a category of one,
Yeah.
but you have to protect that niche. Beckham was ruthlessly selective about his deals.
Because every yes to a project that doesn't fit your brand is basically a small subtraction from what makes you special.
Brand dilution is a wealth killer. If he had just said yes to hawking, like cheap infomercial products for quick cash in the early 2000s, DB Ventures wouldn't be able to charge premium licensing fees today.
Totally. Okay, but I have to play the skeptic here for a minute.
Go for it.
We just spent all this time praising the sheer genius of this model, but let's be real. The average person listening to this deep dive does not have a high-powered legal team inventing magical $25 million contract clauses.
True.
Isn't this just a billionaire's game? Like, what are we leaving out here? Because the access seems completely unreplicable.
It's a completely fair pushback. The direct access to those kinds of lawyers and that specific global leverage is absolutely not replicable for the average person.
Right. You can't just walk into your performance review and ask for a call option on the company.
No, you can't. But while the literal access isn't replicable, the sequence of operations is.
The sequence. Tell me more about that.
You don't start by demanding equity. You have to build the leverage first.
Ah, okay.
Beckham could only demand a revenue share from Adidas because Adidas desperately needed him. He built the audience and the extreme competence first.
Right. Like how I tried drop shipping with zero audience and it was a total grind, but you built an audience first and then your Notion templates sold out instantly.
Exactly. The leverage has to precede the ask. You build your skill, you build your platform, and then once they need you more than you need them, you negotiate for a piece of the pie.
And I guess we also have to talk about survivorship bias here.
Oh, massive survivorship bias.
Because for every David Beckham, there are hundreds of athletes whose restaurants went bankrupt, whose clothing lines failed,
Definitely. But look at why they failed. A lot of athletes dump their own cash into high-risk brick-and-mortar businesses, heavy capital expenditure.
Like opening a massive steakhouse.
Exactly. Beckham's genius was the IP licensing model. He didn't build the factories. He licensed his name to the people who already had the factories. It's low overhead, high margin.
That makes a ton of sense. And honestly, the everyday version of having Beckham's legal team is just paying for competent advice when you do start making money. Like, hire a good CPA, pay a contract lawyer to look over your first big retainer. You scale the team to your current level of leverage.
Exactly. The principles apply at any scale. You use a platform of high visibility to create assets that compound. You negotiate equity over flat fees. You value future optionality over short-term cash.
And you protect your asset.
And you protect your asset.
Which leaves us with a final, pretty provocative thought for everyone listening.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Beckham bet on U.S. soccer in 2007, basically 2 decades before this World Cup validated it. He made a non-obvious bet.
So the question is, what is the non-obvious bet in your field right now? What is the trend you can position yourself for today so that in 10 years, you're already there when everyone else arrives?
That is the million-dollar question. And actually, we want to hear your take on all this down in the comments.
We really do.
Is the Beckham model genuinely replicable at a smaller scale? Or is it just a once-in-a-generation alignment of timing, access, and luck?
I know where you stand on this.
Look, I admit I lean toward the skeptical side. I think the macro timing of the U.S. sports market and that early access gave him an insurmountable head start.
And I completely disagree. I think the core principles, building leverage, securing equity, owning a niche, they transfer perfectly to anyone building an income online today.
Well, let the audience decide. Let us know who you think is right in the comments.
Yeah, please tell them I'm right.
And hey, if this deep dive sparked a new idea for you or helped you look at your own 9 to 5 a little differently, make sure to hit that subscribe button.
And the notification bell so you don't miss our future deep dives.
Understand the playbook, build your platform, own your equity. Catch you next time.